Chaz. How you doing, my friend?
Good. Are we live?
I think we are. It'll come on in a second. It said we're live, so we are live. Yep, looks like
Awesome.
we are live. Here we go. How you been, my friend?
Good.
How's you?
Yourself?
I'm fantastic. Thank you very much for coming in on this
No.
and doing this.
Thank you for inviting me. This is wonderful.
Oh, thanks for being a part of this whole thing as well. From from almost the start of this, and it's a privilege. So,
Yeah. And actually, before we get into it, huge thanks to the guys from Dirt Floor Recording
yeah,
Studio, Steve, who you interviewed, who is actually how I found you,
yeah,
because I've known Eric for a while at Dirt Floor, and I was at they have, well, before the whole virus thing, they would have Halloween parties and summer parties, and I took the drive out there for one of the parties, and the one time I did make it out there, Steve wasn't there, so I missed him in person, but I got
right.
to hang out with Eric and lots of the and his wife and his daughter and lots of the artists that he works with there. And man, it is just, they are good people, and they're doing amazing work. So Eric and Steve, if you're watching, thank you.
Yeah,
So
they're fantastic. And yeah, thanks to them, I got to know you as well, and that's
yeah,
the whole point of this. Like that community is
yeah,
just rolling
right.
in and building. So, well, my wife's on there. She said, "Hi, Chaz, nice to see you." And Saeed is
Ben,
there.
how are
Uh,
you?
hey, Saeed, how you doing? So, well, I, I'm not sure how to start this. Shall we talk about how you got started? But I want to actually introduce you for a second. So,
Sure.
guys, for the past couple of days, Chaz sent me his this playlist that a lot of the songs that he's mixed, and I have to say, man, I enjoyed every moment of every mix you've done, and on compositionally as well. All the songs are fantastic, and there's such an eclectic side to all of them. Um, there's a bunch of bands I can name, but they're all great. They're all great. I was like, why? We have the CLA. It's funny. Maybe we can start off this way. You got the Andrew Sheps, the CLAs, the Valentines, the Andy Wallaces. They're all amazing engineers, and we pick up from them. But it's like the music scene. There's so many fantastic bands out there that people don't know about, and they write and make great music. But maybe they haven't been marketed well, or I don't know what it is. But it's to keep your eyes and ears open for all of this stuff. Don't just listen to what's on the radio. Go find that stuff. There's amazing music out there. And the same thing with the mix engineers and the audio engineers like yourself. You know what I mean? I mean, we all want to be that big name and stuff, which is cool, but that's not what depicts your work. What depicts your work is you as an individual. And your work, my friend, is up at par with all this stuff. I'm not
Well,
just saying it because you're here, because I've been listening in the car the whole time and having it in my monitors in the studio, and it's just fantastic, man. Everything's so brilliant. I enjoyed it. I really
that,
enjoyed it. You know,
that's very kind. And one of the things that you were talking about opportunity before, and one of the things that I've always done is, like, you make your own future, and you take advantage of your own opportunities. So one
yes,
of the things, and even back in the 80s when I was a kid doing 4-track demos for people, one of the things I always did was like look for bands or look for artists who I liked. Maybe
yeah,
I was in my own band, but there was this other band over there, it was really good, or that songwriter, and I'm like, man, I'd love to work with them, but I can't be in their band, so maybe I can record them.
yeah,
And so I've always kept an eye open for like unique artists and outsider artists and people maybe who couldn't afford to go into like the biggest, bestest studio, in the region. It's like, well, I got some gear, I can do a pretty good job for you.
yeah,
So that's how I started, is looking for opportunities and looking for bands that inspired me, because I mean, you do mixes, I do mixes, we record people, whatever. And if you take on a band for a project and commit to it, you're kind of locked in to listening to those songs, take after take after take, and then mix after mix after mix. And
right,
if you can't stand the artist, or you don't like the music, it's really going to be very tough. Even if the money's good, it's still going to be tough to,
right,
just to, fight your way through it. So I've been blessed that the mixes I have worked on, and the artists I've worked with, generally have been awesome. Cool
Dude.
songwriters, different genres of music, because I'm not like genre dependent. Like,
Yeah.
it's got to be metal, or it's got to be, it's got to be 1959 bebop, or it's got to, you know what I mean, 60s, 70s, or whatever.
Yeah,
And it
yeah.
doesn't matter.
And
I
you've
I just
covered all of that. That's the crazy part. And they're all great. They're all great, you know? Anyway,
well,
sorry.
dude, I've got like there's probably about 3 or 4 albums of work I have here. I have like 3 jazz albums that aren't even out yet that I
Oops. I think we've lost you there for a second. Chaz, are you there? Amroth, how you doing, my friend? Hey, Chaz. Sorry, guys. I think we lost Chaz for a second. I'll just give him a minute. How's everybody doing this evening? Guys, is it me or is Chaz frozen? Because last time I thought one of the speakers was frozen, but turns out it's just me. Hmm. Hang on, let me message Chaz and see if he's okay. All right, Chaz is frozen. I guess we'll wait for him to get back shortly. Hey, Amroth, what's going on, my friend? You been working on some new music? Um, yeah, the Stam Child. Twice, Amroth, twice. They sent me the first unit in October, and there was some issues with it, so I sent it back. Then they sent me another new one in December, and the calibration was off. One channel was 7 dB off the other one. Um, it's just bad luck, I suppose. So I managed to send it back, or yeah, again. And to be honest with you, when I ran one channel on it, it was really good. And I couldn't run a stereo thing on it, but it was just my bad. It sounded great. Don't get me wrong, but I need reliability as well, and I can't. And it was an expensive piece. I can't have a piece that's not reliable, especially if I was gonna throw my stereo bus or use it on bass, on vocals, and you know how that goes. And yeah, it's unfortunate. So instead of that, oh, Amro, sorry, man. I'm just naming you as you're on over there. So yeah, instead of I needed a Verimuse, so this is on my stereo bus. I got I don't know if you can see this bad boy here. It's the IGS Varimu 3U. It's actually fantastic. I have to say it sounds great, and it's got MS on it. Yeah, it's a wonderful piece. So it's on my stereo bus, and also use it on bass and vocals. Sometimes drums. It sounds great on drums on a parallel thing going on. All right. So there we go. 1 second. I have a feeling we completely lost Chaz. Hmm. Am I frozen? But Amro, I have to say I have other stam units. I have the 1073s here. Right now it's running through this mic, and they're fantastic. Honestly, it's one of my favorite pre's I'm using like on everything. And the Pultecs are great. Their Pultecs or the stam, yeah, their Pultec versions are really nice. I use this a lot, sometimes on bass, sometimes on vocals. Well, I have a kind of a vocal chain. Sometimes I run the first Pultec into an LA2A, which I have down here on my other side, and then going into another Pultec. So the first one I'll just cut away from. I'll put the mids up, and then after the LA2A, and I bring the second one in, and I put the low end and the high end up on there. So those units have been great. No complaints there. All right, Chaz is reconnecting in a second, having loads of outboard gears that aren't enough hours in the day to play with them. Well, yeah, I don't have loads that much. I do have actually. They're great, and yeah, I play with them all the time, just experimenting with the sound. And as well, when you get something new, you just want to like tweak and learn it inside out. So that's what I do a lot. And there's a lot of units like I know they're all set in place for what I use them for. Like I have my kick snare crush, which is a parallel crush, which I put on my kick and snare, and I run it through this Empirical Labs mic E. So it's a preamp, and I got a pair of these because you can stereo link them. And what it is, it's a preamp, but it also has part of the fatso. So this is a saturation knob, which is also kind of a threshold knob. And then it has part of the distressor. So the only difference is with this and the distressor is the attack and release times. So on the distressors, you have variant attack and release. And the ratio on the distressor has, I think it has a 6-to-1 and a 10-to-1 and 20-to-1. Sorry, 10-to-1 and 20-to-1. But this goes up to 8-to-1 and the nuke, which is kind of that crunch, and it sounds amazing. So it serves three purposes. It's a preamp, a saturation device, and a great compressor as well. So I run kick snare in there. Okay, hang on a second. Charles is back. I'm logging him in right now. Here we go. You all good?
Hey,
What happened? Did you lose the internet there?
the internet just went bye-bye, and actually Zoom crashed too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I hate to badmouth people or things, but this Zoom update from a couple weeks ago has been a little problematic. And so apologies to everybody who's still with us. And you know what? It's not just us, because you know what? On Pure Mix yesterday, Vance Powell's Zoom session.
Yeah. But he had an old laptop, right?
Yeah, but I've got a brand new Mac, so I don't know.
Maybe it is. I mean, I updated it as well, and what's been happening, there's a couple of times, and I think the guest has gone frozen, but he was fine. There was one time with Milton, my wife was telling me we were watching, it's like I couldn't see you, so I couldn't make out if you were actually frozen or was it from my system. I don't know, whatever. Who cares?
Yeah, whatever.
We're back.
Anyway, so I'm back, and just to finish up what I was saying, thanks for the nice words about the mixes, but it's really the artists, the songwriting, and their performances that make it easy. Because I mean, if you've had people send you tracks before, and they're kind of a mess, right?
On that, yeah.
You know what I mean? So sometimes good mixes kind of happen because the arrangement's good, the performance is good, the song is good, and it makes it like
good too, yeah.
Well, yeah, and the quality of the audio is good, and so it's really about the song. I think so.
100%. I completely agree with that. Like, song is king. Whatever serves the song, that's what we do.
Yeah, exactly.
We are slaves to the song, and that was always my motto: is if there's a great song and a great performance or performers, whatever, is the best way is like, why do I have this gear? Is because I want to capture it with the most beautiful possible way I can. You can capture it any way. It's always about the performance, but why not have that quality for it? Sure. And as soon as you get that quality, it's already mixed. You don't have to tweak, and because you know what it is like when you want to tweak something, if it's not well recorded, you start losing a lot of things in the sonics, and then you got to tweak that, and it just becomes a mishmash until it kind of sounds like something. But when it's recorded well, there's just minimal tweaking going on, a little bit of EQ there, maybe a bit of compression. I don't know. It depends what it needs, right?
Yeah, right.
You know that. So
Yeah, each one's different. And back when I was younger and recording to tape, and we were recording to 4-track or 8-track,
yeah,
you didn't have a whole bunch of tracks in your DAW to go in and play with later. So you oftentimes, especially on 4-track or 8-track, where you knew you were gonna have to bounce tracks.
Yep.
Right.
And then
So
put up another track and blah 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 blah.
so like you would have to record them almost to the point of how you wanted them to sound like in the final product,
Yep.
and get the sound really good to the recording first.
Yep.
And so that habit, I still have that habit where I try really hard to make sure I got the mics, run drums or amps or anything, do like. So, you just do what you have to do to make it sound best. And,
I mean, 100%. I mean, for me, it's all about committing, because, when we all learned about recording, we never thought, well, even when technology was around, I mean, I started on a 4-track tape cassette machine, a Tascam in the 90s. And I was like, oh, this is cool. I can track all my stuff. And we've talked about that before. And, but I remember, like, if I needed to record something, whatever effects, if I was playing guitar or something, all the effects had to be there. I mean, I wasn't even thinking about adding this stuff later, because I didn't even know that you could do that. You know what I mean? So it's like, you got to do it this way, and you got to get it right, tweak up the sounds, and then you get the sound right. And it's always been that mentality for me. And now, yeah, technology is amazing. You can tweak and fix stuff up. But there's something about committing to the sound for me on a personal level. Of course, it depends on some recordings. Like, I love experimenting in the studio. I had a keyboardist, a synth player, kind of doing like a prog rock thing going on. So he had a Juno, the Juno synths. And his LCD is busted, so it's only set on one setting. And he loves that setting, but he
don't touch it.
You don't touch it, right? So it's like, great, leave it at that. I told him, this is what we're going to do. So I got my pedals out, my guitar pedals, and I patched a bunch of pedals in and put them into different preamps and saturation. We wanted something out there and mischievous on the keyboard. I'm like, let's try this, let's try that. And we got these crazy sounds. And the beautiful part is, like, everybody's got the same plugins. You can tweak them and stuff like that. You're going to get the sounds you want, but there's something special about having your own stuff where you combine random things and you can come up with some kind of sound that you'll never get again. Like, I will never remember what I recorded for him. I should have taken pictures, but it was like a fuzz pedal with an electro harmonics nano pog mixed with like an Octavia going into a wah that's half cocked. And yeah, that's what we got out of that one. And I think I put a little Echo Boy after it, and it was like, yeah, it was crazy.
That totally works. That totally
works. And
I mean, when I was when I was much younger, let's say 1985, I had like a guitar pedal board, like mostly electro harmonic stuff. And I had like a Casio SK1 keyboard. Right. The old sampler toys and another thing, and a Fostex X15 tape recorder. And I used to take my cheap little keyboards and patch them through my pedal board, through the Chorus and through the Memory Man, and I'm like, whoa, I can do this,
Yeah.
And then as years went on, I would read these stories about the guy from Sparkle Horse, whose name was Mark Linkhouse, and he was a great songwriter and amazingly talented, but he was a pretty cool engineer too. And he would just patch a 57 off a snare drum like through a fuzz box or a distortion pedal, and just track it that way. That was a sound. He committed to it. Through his Neve, right to tape or right to Pro Tools. 57 with a converter from XLR to 1/4 inch into a fuzz box, going to tape.
Yeah, there you go. That's
the snare.
So many crazy things you can do. I mean, this is what this gear is for. It's for me is to experiment with it, all these flavors, and let's tweak. And it's crazy because going into like the whole plug-in world or the rack gear world for me came in a way, in a natural way somehow, because I was always a pedal collector for guitars, and I'd always try out different drives, different. And I'm very particular about the sound I have, so I run through a point-to-point wired amplifier, which is kind of that Dumble clone thing.
Yep.
And lucky I have a signature amp as well, which worked. So it's a nice, beautiful sounding 6L6 clean amp, with the bells and whistles. It's a beautiful top end, low end, and stuff. And for me, all the pedals that came in were all colors. So over the years, it's like learning how to tweak them. So it came natural to me to be able to tweak outboard gear. It just made sense.
Yeah, gain staging, right?
Gain staging and tweaking things and whatever, and getting sounds out of them and combining. I used to always combine a bunch of pedals because I remember people would buy like one pedal that did it all. I'm like, why would I do that? I got these 3 pedals. I can do the same thing. You know what I mean? So it just got easier and easier for people because they put it in one, which makes life easier, definitely. So
Sure.
but that's how they came up with multiple things to put in one unit. Example, it's a combination of different pedals. That's all it is. And if you know how each pedal works, then you can get that combo if you want. Just use your imagination.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah,
So
it makes total sense. I mean, especially if you're a guitar player, or a synth player.
Yeah.
Historically, if you're used to like plugging in things, patching between pedals or between oscillators and VCAs or whatever, filters, you're used to patching things, gain staging, and then tweaking dials and faders, right?
Yeah.
So the jump from being a old school electronic kind of person or a guitar player, it wasn't that much of a stretch into the studio. In some ways, a lot of those basics were already covered if you had a good grasp of your gain staging and how to plug stuff in and not blow things up, right? All those things.
Yeah.
And experiment. It's like, well, what happens when I put the fuzz box in front of the wah-wah? Okay. What happens if I put the distortion box after the wah-wah?
Right.
Okay, that's a different sound. Okay, well, maybe I need 2 distortion boxes, one on either side of the wah-wah, so I can get both sounds, right?
Exactly.
And I've seen people do like, oh, phase shifter should always be in front of the wah-wah. You know what I mean? Or it's like
whatever.
Yeah, like why not either or both?
Yeah.
And
it gets even more interesting because like for live, I have my set 4 or 5 pedals which I use, which I know will just work live, and I can do many things with them. But in the studio, that's why I even experiment even further, like putting things before and after, or in the loop or out the loop, or even I have this tiny little amp where I like split the signal into that, and that's got like this 5K kind of range in there, which gives that crazy sizzle on top. It was like mult that with the other amp. It's like cool. You know what I mean? And it's just a strange sound, and why not? And just
absolutely.
But obviously when it came to like the studio, then you got to get more serious because I think what you start using different set of ears for things. You start hearing things differently, and I think it's great practice for musicians because you start hearing more of the nuances and the subtleties of everything, and it trained. And I'm still every day you're training your ear and learning something new. I mean that obviously. So.
Yeah. I mean, and I grew up with like this weird thing about music when I was little. I like loved it. And like I would have dreams of like right here music, and then I would wake up and I'd still hear the music. This is like nursery school, kindergarten age. When I was little, like I would like hear music in my head, like where I sound like it was coming in from the outside. And so I was always very interested in it. And my parents always had a really cool stereo system and tons of great vinyl. And my parents had great musical taste. There were just great jazz records, and just Motown, jazz, R&B, just all kinds of great stuff. A lot of movie soundtracks too. But, by I think I got my first guitar in 3rd grade. I wanted one. My parents got me one, and my dad's younger brother played guitar, and my older cousin Jennifer played. So I kind of wanted one too. And I was like 3rd grade. It was this like really crappy acoustic where the action was this high off the neck.
Right.
And like, I wasn't getting lessons
before you play it.
Yeah. They got me a book. I couldn't figure out like how to tune it right. And it just hurt your hands. Cause like, I'm in 3rd grade. I was 9 or 10 years old. the strings are like that high off the neck.
Right.
And so I fuddled with it for a little bit, and then didn't really get back into playing music again until like seventh, eighth grade. I started teaching myself how to play keyboards. When I was in like sixth grade, at the end of elementary school, I had this music teacher named Mrs. Emmy, who I had from like first grade to sixth grade. When I was younger, I didn't like being in the music class because I didn't want to sing.
Right.
But I loved music. I had my own record player. I had Beatles records, and I had like Beethoven and Mozart classical albums. Like I had Partridge Family records too. I mean, just whatever, right? Because I like in first or second grade, I had all these records. I love music, but I just didn't want to sing like in class. I was like too bashful.
Yeah.
But then sixth grade came along. She started teaching music theory.
All right.
And I was like, and my brain, it just clicked. It was like, oh, measures, okay, sharps, flats, these are the notes, right? And time signatures and all that stuff. And I was like, oh, this is like a foreign language that I'm learning. And it's like there's like magic on this staff that's like, oh, okay, now you can decipher it like hieroglyphics or something. It all it starts to make sense. It's mathematical, but it's like taking art and trying to like document art in this very mathematical way. And it just kind of clicked. And I remember I was admittedly a pain in that teacher's ass when I was younger, because like I didn't want to be in the class and I wouldn't sing. And I remember her telling me, she's like, she said something to the effect that, you know, music is going to be your passion and the biggest part of your life. And she's like, you're too young to see it now, but I see it. And she was right. You know, I just like, once I got really bit by the bug, going from music appreciation to like understanding how some of the mechanical stuff works behind the scenes, then I was like, I got to teach myself how to play keyboards. And then I had like 2 years of piano, and then started taking guitar lessons in high school, took rock guitar from a guy named Steve Glore, whose family owned the local music store. Great guy, great teacher. And then I took classical guitar lessons for a while, for several years. And also in high school, I was in like marching band and concert band, you know, with the uniforms.
Yeah. That's great discipline. These are fantastic disciplines.
Yeah. So I played percussion and drums in marching band, and I also played baritone, which is like the half-size tuba.
Yeah. I'm a huge Horn fan, so
yeah. So for me, listening to music, I played guitar, and I loved like Hendrix and Sabbath when I was a kid, and like hard rock bands, but like Cheap Trick and Beatles and stuff too, and then like punk rock or Motorhead or whatever. But I loved all kinds of music.
Yeah.
And because I was a classically trained guitar player, I got a call from a guy like when I was in college. He said, hey, I need a bass player for a band. Can you play bass? And I was like, well, you know, I've touched one once or twice. So I lied and said, yeah, sure. Of course I can play. And he asked me if I had a bass and a bass amp. I'm like, yeah. So I ran out and like, I was working part-time, spent all my money on like a used SVT rig, a PVT 40 bass. And luckily my classical guitar training, you know, with like fingers, right?
Yep.
And flamenco style and classical, I was able to jump right in on bass. Just had to get used to the fatter strings. And I got really used to playing bass and, you know, making lots of money. But that band I was in, we did a lot of jazz and big band and show tunes and ethnic music, because we did weddings, you know, birthday parties, and we played, you know, bar gigs and cover gigs. Yep. So we had like 6, 7, 8 sets of music from, you know, standards, you know, jazz, 50s, 60s, 70s, into the early 80s, country, Southern rock, right? I mean, every style. And so I think if you have a background where you grew up with lots of music and you keep an open mind and you play lots of music, it definitely helps you when you're working with artists in different genres, you know? Yep. It's like, because I don't want to be like just the jazz guy or just the indie guy or just the metal guy or, you know, or urban or whatever style. I just like want to work with great artists. We're doing cool music.
And, you know, I'm completely with you on that, because that's exactly kind of how I grew up. I mean, when I was growing up in the house, there was always Motown going on. There was a lot of James Brown, I love James Brown's. You know, I mean, I'm a huge funk fan, but I didn't realize that till later on. And then my, early teens, I got into the metal because we got to be rebellious. The Anthrax, the Megadeth, and all, and they're great, amazing. Don't get me wrong. And then when I went to the U.S., I went and bought an electric guitar from opposite Berkeley School of Music. There was a shop called Daddy's Junkie Music over there.
Yep. We used to have one in Buffalo too.
Yeah, and I saved up like for a few months to buy an electric guitar there, and I go down. I bought one for $60. It was great. It's the best investment I ever made. But the thing is, when I'm saying this story is when I went downstairs in the basement, that's where they had all the used gear, and it was dingy down there. So I go down there, and they had this big PA system going on, and they had James Brown playing, and I can't remember what tune it was. I think it was I can't remember what it was. One of those heavy, deep pocket, funky grooves going on, and the bass was blaring out. And that time it's like, yeah, I'm only a metalhead, blah blah blah. And I was testing out the guitar and stuff like that, and this thing was like bopping. I was like, shit, this is good. And it just brought back memories. And that's where it switched. And then I discovered the whole jazz era and the world music and everything. So I've had many different projects throughout the years. I've had bands like Abstract Collision, or these are bands Abstract Roots, Moist Slush, and every album I did was completely different than the other one. I had that fusion stuff, and then I had the world music stuff, and then with the Bullfunk Zoo stuff, I had the R&B soul stuff, I had the rock stuff, and I completely get where you're coming from, and I completely believe that every album should sound completely different than the other. For me, my perspective, because music is so vast. Don't pigeonhole yourself to that. But anyway, enough about that. I wanted to get to the point where when you were in high school or when you were in school, you're playing all the big bands, not big, the marching bands and the covers and all of this stuff. So what was your first turning point to transition or to start creating records? I know you said you wanted to record all these guys, but what was it that, triggered you to start or get your own first set to start off with?
Yeah, well, actually what really got me going, because like I'm older, where we all had vinyl, and I used to see all the names of people on the back of records,
Right.
The engineers, like who's this George Martin guy, who's this Shelleyakis guy, right? Who's Alan Parsons, all these like famous producers from back in the day. And I'd read magazines and go to the library before there was the internet and like try to find out what I could about like recording studio stuff. And when I was a senior in high school, I was like in senior chorus and also in a music theory class. And for our music project, for one of the class projects for a big grade, we had to come in and do a live performance in front of the class. So a keyboard friend of mine who played keyboard and synths and I got together to like do a cover song of an old Seals and Crofts song from the 70s that we were gonna like just destroy and twist into, I guess now you'd think of it like Flaming Lips style, just kind of psychedelic, destroyed. But there was only two of us, right? And the song had like all these guitars and flutes and all this stuff. And so there was a reel-to-reel tape recorder in the music room at our high school.
Oh, wow.
And we asked the teacher, like, hey, can like we take this home? Because maybe we can record ourselves like as a backing track and then play live with this playing through speakers behind us.
Right. Kind of the Robert Fripp thing going on.
Yeah, right. So she's like, that's a really cool idea. Okay. So she let us take home this like really expensive like Ampex reel-to-reel tape recorder. And me and my friend worked in his basement and my basement. We took turns, depending on whose parents were like less cranky. Working on crazy synthesizer parts and loud distorted, big muff guitars through I had a Marshall stack, just making noise. And we're recording stuff and like trying to bounce things back and forth between cassettes and building up these backing tracks. And it actually sounded pretty good considering we were like 17 or 18, right? With some crappy Radio Shack mics that were like Shure knockoffs. And then I was like, this is really cool. I really enjoy this process of like putting stuff on tape and like checking it out, making it better. And then within a few, like by the mid 80s, I got a 4-track machine, started doing demos on location for bands. And then all of a sudden, these like 4-track demos I was doing, a lot of bands that couldn't afford to go into a big studio would use these demos to take to the local radio college or to the local college radio station that would play local punk and alternative music. Right. So, and this is still like the 80s. So there was no Pro Tools, no anything. So you record everything, put it on cassette, take it to the radio station. They had a local night or a local hour show. And bands would take the recordings I did in mixes and start and get on the radio, and they get put in rotation like in college radio off this little, these Fostex and Tascam recordings I was doing, and they sounded really good.
Yeah.
And I was like, I was getting compliments, and people were like, "Hey, can you record us? Can you record us? Can you record us?" I'm like, yeah. So I'm like, I can do this. And, then it just, that's what I got bit by the bug, because the process of recording and making it right and making something cool, right? And maybe something magical, unexpected happens. Like you have this idea in your head, but then it comes out a little different. But that difference is good because it's now taking you like in a place you never thought you'd go.
Yeah. And you just discover new stuff every time.
So yeah, I mean, if you're wired like me and you get bit by that bug, right? If that bug bites you, it's game over.
Yeah. I think that's why we're in it right now.
That's why we're having this chat, man. It's
exactly.
Game over, dude. I mean, you've got that huge rack of toys behind you, and I've got.
Well, look at that.
Yeah, I got tons of toys.
What
sitting
you got going on there? Why don't you can you give us a little pick? That's a Toft console you have over there? That's a 32-channel Toft console.
That's the and actually I don't know if Paul's watching. Paul Besh from Quiet Country Audio, who's a studio in this area. I bought this board off of him. A couple years ago, he switched all separate preamps and channelers and stuff.
All right.
And but the Toft ATB 32, I mean, they discontinued it a couple years ago.
Okay.
But this is the 32 channel with the meter bridge. And at the time it was about a, $8,000 to $10,000 board. Right. And you really couldn't touch anything better than that for under 30 grand.
Yeah. I mean, they're great. They're great consoles. I've never used them, but I keep hearing great things. So how do you have that running? Is it, are you looking as a summing all your outs going into there and going into the inline channel strip of each, and then you put it out? Sorry,
dude, I've got this place set up to do. That's a great question.
Yeah.
Back here, I have patch bays, right?
Yep.
So those are XLR patch bays coming in. So from the live room, I've got, I don't know, was it 24, 30 something channels of XLRs coming in, which I can patch either directly to my Focusrite converter preamps, because I've got the Claret 8 Pre-X and then 2 satellite Clarets. So I got 28 or 26 or 28 in, 30 out or something like that.
Right.
So I can either patch directly to the Focusrite preamps and converters, or I can patch into the Toft,
and then
which is what I usually do. And then I take the line out from the Toft and put it into the line input of the Focusrite.
Right.
So the Focusrites are converters, but the beauty of the Toft is it, designed by Malcolm Toft, who's the guy from Trident.
Right. And, I know that's a whole history, isn't it?
Yeah. So the EQs on this thing are sweet as heck, So when I do a recording, I'll track through it, right? And sometimes, depending on the project, I may get enough analog tastiness and goodness tracking through it, right? That my raw tracks, I can mix it in the box so it doesn't sound as bad,
right?
Because it's already gone through all separate analog channels, right? So I can do that, or I can take all the outputs from my DAW, and I can output those through converters, through the Toft, mix there, hit, compressors and reverbs and delays, outboard if I want,
there,
and then bring it back into the computer and print the stereo. The other thing I have is the Tegler TSM,
the summing box.
Yes, it's the 40-channel tube summing mixer.
How is it?
Dude, it is sweet. It
Because I
is.
got the Kahayan. I don't know if you know. I got a 32 channel. I summon to my Kahayan. This thing here. Have you heard
Yeah.
of this brand?
Yeah.
And it's got that whole SSL 4000 thing, and I can switch out to a different transformer to my Neves or my Manleys and stuff.
Yeah. That's
It's a
sweet.
brilliant unit. Yeah. So I saw the Tegler and I was looking at both, but there's something about the Tegler. I just hate the aesthetics of them. I don't know if that. I mean, that's a stupid thing to say, with the weird colors they got going on. I was like, I'm not too sure about that.
You know what? I usually keep my control room pretty dark, so
Yeah.
It doesn't bother me that much.
But
But no, I totally know what you mean. I mean, I've got a couple old ART units from the 80s in here.
yeah,
They've got like that it's got the 80s font with like with like those colors from like
pink,
those
fuchsia colors
and pink and it's funny as heck, but
they still work, man. They're great.
Yeah, so the Toff board is for tracking sometimes, I can mix through it, I can sum through it. There's the Tegler we were talking about, the summing mixer, or I can just do in the box, or I can do kind of what I usually do is kind of a hybrid thing where if I have like some heavy lifting corrective EQ stuff I need to do, right? I'll slap on Fab Filter Pro Q3 in the box, right?
Yeah.
Or if there's a resonant thing that's bugging me, and I'll clean stuff up in there and then shoot it out and then bring it back in, and so I'll do like the hybrid thing too. But
sorry to cut you off, but speaking today, I was experimenting. I wanted. So they have the Massenburg EQ on. I use a lot of UA stuff as plugs. I always use the Fab Filter. It's fantastic. So today I was like, you know what? I want to shoot out these EQs. What the hell are they all talking about, right? So I these more of the parametric ones, and I have the Brainworks Mix V3, which is a fantastic EQ, and I have that on the end of my stereo bus where I push the stereo width to about 140%, and it doesn't have that phase on it, and I use the mono maker on it, which is really good.
Oh, cool.
Anyway, so I wanted to check out the top end, so 16 and above, and the low end 100 and below, and just kind of match them up. So I put the Massenburg, the UA Massenburg on there. I don't have it. I don't know. I did it as a trial. I have the Fab Filter. I was like, hey, let's see what this is all about. I have to say it does sound great, but it's not far off from the Fab Filter Q3. I was like, sweet. I'm happy about that because I don't want to have to buy this damn thing now. You know what I mean? The low end on the Massenburg, I have to say it was nice and tighter.
Okay.
But, a little bit more tweaking in the Fab Filter because how they put the volume, their volume levels are going to be different than another one. And then the Q levels, they say it's one example. On another plugin, they'll say it's one, but the curve is probably a little bit bigger or smaller, whatever you want to call it. Just need to tweak around with it. But you can get away with it. It's that's how I experiment. It's like, okay, if I have a plugin, all right, I know how to use it. Now let me get deeper in there, and see how it sounds for me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of shooting test tones, tones and sine waves or pink noise or white noise through something, and then having a meter on the other side, like Voxengo Span or even right, and just see what it's doing to the curve, see what it's doing to the EQ.
Yeah,
but before every mix session, I always like calibrate everything.
Yeah.
So, well, see,
that's why you have analog gear. Like people don't know that.
No. I calibrate my plugins in the box too, because you'd think that once I have my presets and I save my settings, right?
Yeah.
Where I've got, let's say on my drum bus, I've got distressor plugins going into like a Pultec style EQ, right?
Yeah.
And you think that I set it with the gain staging properly, and then you save your own preset, you come back, put it in next time, it should be the same, right? Yeah, but if I shoot the test tone through it, and this has happened in like Logic and Studio One, it's happened like in different things where like all of a sudden the VU meter on the end's like, well, I calibrate everything for minus 18 dB, right?
Right.
When I shoot everything through, I gain stage each one, so each plug-in feeds the next one at 8 minus 18. But
Right.
then you're looking at it, it's like, oh, it's coming out hot or coming out quiet. So before every session, or like with outboard gear too, like I try to calibrate everything,
Yep.
just to make sure that I know it's coming through and I'm getting like the best bang for the buck with it. But I'm sorry, I'm going off.
No. That's great because that's like, you know, on my comps or whatever, you're gonna touch the buttons. Like I got some comps that are potentiometers, they're not stepped, so
Yep.
a little move and it throws things slightly off. You know, so I always run the test on. And I learned one thing actually, funny enough, because you know when you put your test up, it's always automatically at 1K, and 1K
Yep.
can be really irritating to the ear. So I mute everything anyway. I just visually look at it. But it's like, why am I using 1K? I'll just use 440. Much more pleasant to the ears.
Yeah.
And I just thought I'd throw that one in there. But
no, you're absolutely right. I mean, when I'm doing test tones, the first thing I do is hit the mute button too, you know, and then you know, and
I hear it off my cans. Like I put my cans on the side, and I can barely hear just to make sure that there's a sound going on. That's it, you know.
But I mean, yeah, something I read on, I think Michael Brower's website. I know he runs a couple different test tones, like maybe one at 100 hertz and one at 1K or something like that. When he calibrates his 4-bus thing, because he has his Browerizing 4-bus kind of setup. Right. And I think on the 1 bus he calibrates like at 100, and then another one like at 1K, maybe another one at 10K. I have to go back and read it. But
why does he do that? Like, I'm sure there's some kind of reason why he's using different frequencies rather than just pure.
I think one is, and don't quote me on this because I don't remember exactly,
right.
But I know that his 1 bus, he calls it his B bus, I believe.
Right.
He combines his drums and bass into 1 bus.
Right.
Right. And
whole drums and bass or kick and bass?
No. The entire percussion, all the drums and the bass are subbed into a subgroup.
Right.
Because when he mixed on a board, he had eight channels of buses, right?
Right.
So he had 8 faders. So 2 faders would be pan left and right. So it gave him effectively like 4 buses.
Right.
So 1 bus would be for low frequency stuff like bass and drums. 1 bus would be more like mid-range stuff.
Okay.
The next bus would be more higher frequency stuff, high-end stuff. And his last bus would be for like ambient and spatial kind of effects and things in the background, which he'd put a stereo widener on to like 150. So he would calibrate. So he knew because he was using all outboard gear. So, so Fairchilds and LA2As and their tubes and old things. So he would calibrate them before every session, because and I know from tube amps that, one day that, that angle sounds great and the next day it doesn't sound as good.
Right.
And maybe the voltage is a little low in your room or something, or it's really hot out or it's humid out. Something is messing with those tubes and capacitors. So he would run test tones through everything before every mix just to make sure it's where he wants it, which makes sense. It's just a lot of work.
It is, and there's a couple of things there. You just spring to my mind. Like I didn't know about the Michael Brower technique when he's got the the drums and the low end on 1 bus, the mids on 1 bus, the high mids. And that's interesting because that's a different way of doing multi-band compression. Do you know what I mean?
It's interesting.
Kind of thought,
That's a good like dovetail there, because I think he said he happened upon this thing, and I shouldn't be talking for Michael Brower, but if I remember the interview, I think he said something about he kind of happened upon the technique working on an Aretha Franklin record, and everybody mixes to a 2-bus. And what was happening was the bass or the bass drum was hitting the compressor on the 2-bus so hard that it was bringing like the entire mix down. And then he didn't
have any high pass on there.
Yeah, so he tried to drop it. He tried everything he could to get it to balance. So he fixed one thing, but it would make something else sound crappy. Right. So then he was like, well, why don't I just put them through a separate bus before they hit the 2-bus and compress them on their own first, tame them over here, and then let them hit the 2-bus. And so I think it expanded. And there's other people who were, who'd been messing with that, same kind of thing for a while. But what I like about what he does is that he has it distilled down to a method where it doesn't matter what kind of band you're working with, right?
Right.
It's not like a synth bus is always this and a guitar bus is always that. It's
Yeah.
like low stuff, mid high, high
Yeah.
stuff, ambient and sparkly, sprinkly fairy dust stuff, you know.
Which makes sense actually. Thinking like this is the first time I hear this method, and I'm actually going to give it a try because in the end of the day, we're just trying to create a balance at the end. Like if,
But the trick is, and Andrew Sheff's, a lot of guys talk about this. They try not to use stereo compression, right? What they do, and one of the things that I've tried to adopt too, is use like dual mono.
right.
So I use dual mono on my buses, and or when I split out to my outboard gear, I can do, that 2-channel compressor as a stereo link that I turn off, so they're running independently. So
Right.
that one loud guitar thing on the right side is not bringing the entire mix down, right? It's only so what it does when you do dual mono and you start splitting out your separate like lows, mids, highs, and sparkly fairy dust stuff, right? Yeah. Each one of them has a different compressor. You can use, and as you know, different compressors can instill different flavors,
and react differently as well, right? Anyway.
So you use, let's say, something spanky on the drums and bass if that's the kind of song you want, where you get SSL style or distressor style, right? Yeah. And then maybe an LA 3A style on the guitars, or maybe a Fairchild, right? So you can use different style compressors, work, as you know, better with different instruments. So if you group all the strings and all the mids or the highs into this thing, you can hit it with a compressor that adds color, and it's the right kind of compressor for the job. So then you have like these 4 blocks of music that all have left to right motion going on,
right,
being built up on top of each other, right? So you can get like this kind of swirly 3D thing that you can exaggerate or be very subtle with. And it's like weird, but it kind of works. But it's, I don't know, it's more work.
But that's okay in the end if you want to get. You know what's funny, Chaz? Like I've been mixing these past couple of records, and on automation example, I mean, in the end of the day, okay, before that, speaking of dual mono, I've been running the whole kind of Andrew Sheff's rear bus technique, which has all the music in but the drums, which is great. And I have this Jeff Dakin compressor, FET compressor. He's done something none of my gear has. I haven't seen on any other gear. This knob here. So to the right, it's all the way stereo. All the way to the left is dual mono, but it's a potentiometer, so you can mix and match the dual mono. It blends. And right smack at noon, at 12 o'clock, man, it's great. I was like, what a dude. Like, why didn't I think about this before? It's always like,
that's nuts.
It is. And it's great. Dual. I mean, it depends on certain things. On a complete 2-bus, I wouldn't stick it there. I'd just keep it on stereo. But if I want to run drums parallel to it, I'd put on dual mono. Man, it's got so much punch and width to it as well. I don't know what it does. It just sounds good.
Yeah, right.
I really don't know. And the funny part is the left channel is completely off calibrated from the right one. So I have to calibrate the crap out of this. Because if my gain here is like at 9 o'clock and my gain over here, my output gain here is like at 11 o'clock. And my threshold.
Tables.
Yeah, no. It's I bought this secondhand and I knew something wrong. It was just but I have to calibrate all the time to get it matched. So I use this white Sharpie with a point on there, which is kind of like a marker that can go, and I just put it on the dot there and hopefully get it right and recalibrate again.
Yeah.
But the other thing I wanted to say, I forgot. I was going to tell you about this, and then what were we talking about again? I forgot for a sec. The compression.
Well, no, we were talking about the Michael Brower thing with the
right. And I mean, it's crazy. There's so many things. The Michael, I mean, it just makes sense. Like, I didn't think about it this way. Running, your master buses, like your total buses, in that philosophy of looking at it as different frequency ranges rather than instrumental ranges. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
that's kind of interesting, actually. I
Yeah,
mean,
because
in a way, it's the same thing if we think about it, because you have your drums, you have your bass, and all of that. But the drums has a big frequency range. You have from the kick all the way up to 10K, 12K, whatever with the
yeah,
cymbals. And the bass, you got the lower, and people forget a lot about the mids. That's where I love the mids on. Anyway, and yeah, but if you think about it, that I'm gonna try that. I'm gonna try a mix and just think about things on the multiple buses that way. Hmm.
yeah. Well, what's it? Yeah, it's interesting. Now, the other thing that he does is he sends his background vocals, I think, lots of times to that spatial ambient bus or
Yeah,
anything he
I
wants.
have one of those on there.
So you want those Mutt Lang, Def Leppard, or Shania Twain vocals?
Right.
That's where you send them, kind of thing.
But I stumbled upon. I've always been a huge fan of Andrew Sheps, just because I think he's a fantastic teacher, and he's got a lot of knowledge in and out, and he's a fantastic mixer.
Yeah, oh,
So
yeah.
I've many years ago I fell upon his template, and I've been using it. I've tweaked the crap out of it, but it's great. It completely makes sense. So I open up a mix, throw up the song, it's there, and just tweak between here and you have the multitude of different. It's all about parallel compression and EQ and whatnot. That's what I use, and the stereo bus. So I mixed into the stereo bus. What's your stereo bus? What have you got on the stereo bus?
Generally speaking, I've got actually I usually keep like 3 different compressors on there just to see which one I like best for the song. So if I'm mixing in the box, I'll have like the SSL bus compressor.
Yep. I'll use this guy.
Yep. For a plug-in, I've got the Townhouse, which is like one of the Brainworks ones, I think, which is like that rare one of a kind SSL modded one. I'll keep a Fairchild on there. Usually on my mix bus, I've got like a Pultec EQ.
Right.
Sometimes I have like a 3 or 4 band multi-band on there very lightly, but actually all my like 4 Michael Brower style buses I use plus my mix bus, I have on all 4 of them the True Iron plugin from Kazrog, which is the transformer emulation.
Right. The True Iron does something like Shadow Hills does. The Shadow Hills comp. They got the iron.
No. This is just a transformer. It has like 8 or 6 different transformer models.
Okay.
It's just a transformer emulation.
Right. Okay.
Right, and it's got like 6 different transformers for like Neves or Tridents or old. Right, all that.
Like going out of that, basically. This is what I got on my summing. So I got the SSL, and I can switch it to the different transformers.
So I've got usually 3 or 4 different comps for flavor to see which one sounds best for the song. A Pultec EQ. I also mix into a limiter sometimes as well.
Yep. Just
so it kind of gives the illusion of being like the finished product.
Right.
So I'll push it to like -12, -10 LUFS.
Right.
I'll push it so it's sounds like a record. I mean, I don't have it like that all the time, but I'll mix into it a lot just so when it gets to mastering, I have a rough idea what it's going to sound like. So
speaking of this, like today I've been testing out my summing box, my first 8 channels, the odd numbers, I can mono them or keep them as left and right. And the first 8, the 2, 4, 6, and 8 are a bit off. Anyway, I contacted them. They're going to sort me out, whatnot. But the reason I brought this up is because this thing likes to be run hot, likes to be driven. So that's when you really feel the glue. So when I crank it up in the actual summing box, it likes to go in the red, and it really feels great. So the way I do it, I want to talk to you about the whole gain staging within how you sum with your own gain staging. I do a completely different gain stage if I'm in the box. So as you said, -18, I keep things between -18, -16, between -10 to -6 on the stereo bus. But when I'm using the summing, it's a different ball game. I try to keep everything under like -6, whatever it is, and drive the outputs really hot. Of course, when you're going out of a converter, and it's not going back into the converter, it's going out into an analog piece of gear, you can drive it as much as you want. You're not going to get that clip sound or whatnot. It's like using a console. So
exactly. Yeah.
That's how I drive it when it comes back in. And that's the beautiful part about analog summing. So today I was doing an A/B comparison within in the box and my summing. And the summing, I mean, this thing sounds, you know how they sound, good summing box.
Yeah.
It sounds good. It sounds bigger. It's got more width. There's a bit of depth going on. It's just, you know, I can't explain it.
Better.
You hear it.
Better.
It's better. It is better, right?
But yeah, you know, I mean, I'll be honest. There's some times where there's just certain things that have crossed my path that don't really, it's not that they don't sound different. I just don't know if they sound that much better. And I think a lot of it depends on the music, you know what I mean? And the arrangement and stuff. Some stuff like really dense mixes.
Yep.
Really dense mixes either become amazing or totally fall apart when you run them through a board or you sum them. It's just something about a really dense mix. It just, it's either going to be too much or it just falls apart. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or it's going to sound great. But a mix that, let's say more of a, I don't say singer-songwriter thing, but a mix, let's say like a Miles Davis style jazz band or bebop stuff or something like that, right? Stuff like that, where there's like only a few mics on maybe like 3 or 4 instruments, you know, jazz, piano, you know, a drummer, a bass player, maybe a horn player, right? Old classic thing. We've got like 4 mics, 5 mics. That where there's a lot of space in the mix and a lot of bleed and ambience. Sometimes those things sound way better going through summing or going through a console, because I think just the difference between the different channels and the differences in the components makes it sound different and bigger. Right. And like I've tried using like the Waves NLS thing.
Yeah, me too.
But it's just like
it didn't make much of a difference for me. It just,
no, I mean, you know, you throw it up on the Spectrum, it's like, well, you see it's adding a couple odd harmonics up there maybe, or, you know, but it just didn't make that much of a difference. I mean, you can try pushing it, but it's like, it's just another plus. It's like, you know, I've got 30 of them or 40 of them or 50 of them across all these tracks. It's just sucking memory out of the computer and not really doing that much, right?
Yeah.
So, but there's some songs though where I found that it's a little different, but it's not better. And if it's not worth wasting the time doing it, if it's not working for a song, then just do it in the box.
Yeah.
But if it's working, going through all the cool stuff with the VU meters and the tubes and the, you know, then do it, because it's like cool.
You know, it's crazy. You're talking like with my summing box. So I have this option of, I have my SSL transformers in your 4000. I have another option where I can run my, as I said, the preamps. So I run my Neves, my 1073s. They sound great. And I have my Manley, which are 2 pre's. Mm-hmm. And on certain music, they just like breathe fire, which is the Manleys. And on some other pieces of music, it just completely collapses. Like, what the fuck? I just heard on another song, it sounded great, but on this sounds like shit. So it's really interesting how even valves react, or tubes, they react differently to different timbres. And
sure,
and it didn't sound like shit. It was good, but what happened was on one mix, it was like nice, big, and fat. This one created that fatness, but it really brought it a bit too narrow for my taste.
Yeah, it gets like squashed.
It gets squashed, but on other mixes it was open. You know what I mean? So I don't know.
Well, you know, that's the thing with a lot of the analog gear and tape, right? A lot of it had kind of compression built into it.
Yep. The natural compression.
Yeah, natural compression through the analog circuitry to tape, which in some ways made it certain things easier to mix. But I don't know. I've just found that sometimes I run stuff through and just like you said, the mix either gets big and open or it just kind of collapses and
exactly.
So my YouTube, my phone died here. I'm not sure who's on YouTube or who's.
Oh yeah. Let me. We got.
Yeah, we've been sitting here gabbing for an hour.
But that's all right. That's all right. I mean, the guys on the live. What I love about the guys on the live chat, everybody's talking to each other, which is fantastic.
Oh, good.
And we got Brent in the house. Welcome, Brent. And they all say hi. Is Stephen Klein? I guess he's a friend of yours. He says, "Hey,
yes. Hello, Stephen."
and yeah, they're all saying hello and just chatting away. I think they're just listening. I think this is what they want. Like, the other episodes are great, more in the philosophy, but there's nothing wrong with talking shop and gear because that's
Yeah.
kind of like big boys' toys for us. So this is one other thing. It's interesting. Your stereo bus is very similar to mine, and so I have my. I always start off with I mean, as you said, it depends on each mix. So I always go my VCA, which is that SSL type. I have a TK
Yep.
audio,
Yep.
and then it goes into my Varimue, which is initially I had a Stam Child before. The Stam Audio Stam Child
Yep.
is
Of course.
and I was sent two of them units, but the first one was faulty, and then the second time they sent it was also faulty, so I sent it back. Anyway, so I got this IGS 3U, which got mid side on it, which is so helpful on a
Oh yeah,
stereo.
I bet.
By the way, sometimes, not all, not all the time, not all. So today I was experimenting. I'm always experimenting with this because it's got a lot of variables in it. I guess it's called variable mu, whatever.
Yeah.
I always use in my philosophy. I don't know how it works for you, but I always looked at the VCA as more of that compression that pushes everything kind of towards the middle. Do you know what I mean? Like that's what it does anyway. So
Kind of tighter.
spectrum, it gets it a bit tighter to this, and then I throw the Varimue underneath with the needle doesn't even move. Sometimes I don't even put the threshold. I just run it through, or I might put a little bit of threshold where the meter runs under 1 dB gain reduction. But what it does for me is kind of like the Fairchild thing. So you get the SSL that brings it this way, and then you run it after with the Varimue, and the Varimue gives you the bottom and the top on this side, so kind of tucks it. You know what I mean? So that's how I'm using it more or less. Sometimes if I really need it, and then I put the EQ, Pultec EQ, and parametric after that.
Yeah. Well,
if you got the Brainworks EQ, the version 3, or I forgot what they're called. I just always see them as V3 or V2 from UA. Yeah. Try out, and it's funny because with Alex, which we were talking to last Sunday, and we kind of use the same. It's funny how people use the same thing or think that same way, and it's not something I caught off on a video. I was just experimenting with, and I'm like, yeah, sweet, that works. On your 2 bus, after all that chain, try this. It's the stereo width on the Brainworks if you have it, because the thing is with stereo width plugins, you always get that weird phase thing going on if you don't do it right. Like the S1, like sometimes the S1 pisses me off a lot. Sometimes it works great, but this Brainworks, I use it both because the stereo width really like keeps everything intact. So I go up to like it's 100% at normal stereo, and then like 120, 130% about there. If just give it a try, and put the mono maker. There's a mono maker button on there. And I discovered later on that's a Michael Kozowski method. So it pushes the mono maker about 80 to 100 there. So what it does is it opens up the stereo. You mix into this, so you already got the left and right, and then the mono maker kind of goes together, all together, rather than have a stereo width where it kind of dips it a little bit in the middle. But this
sure.
Out. You know what I mean? Anyway, I just thought.
Well, no. That's actually an interesting technique because. I mean, there's different ways to sculpt the sound, right?
Yeah.
So, and it's just really it's just about being inquisitive and curious. And if you've got the gadgets, either plugins or hardware, and you got downtime, play with them. Run stuff through them and see what you can do. Put it on a meter and test it, and there's just so many options and. We have the capability to do all this great stuff now that, 20, 25 years ago, we couldn't have been doing this.
No.
Not at this level outside of a, big studio. We couldn't have been doing this.
No. And that's the beautiful part about this whole hybrid setup. I mean, where we're at, it's best of both worlds, I suppose.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask actually the guys, Steve Miller says, hi, hey, Charles, great stuff.
Steve, I've known Steve for a long time. He's a great drummer and a great guy. And I've known Steve since probably mid 80s, maybe. Yeah.
Hey, Steve, what's going on? Welcome to the show. Welcome to Bullfunk Studios. Welcome, Chaz. Welcome, Steve. Welcome, everybody. I wanted to ask actually Brent and Amro, since they've been on this show all the time.
Yeah, they're
I'm
always there.
Yeah, they've been fantastic, and they're just avid people. What is your two bus? What's on your two bus? It's cool just to find out what everybody's using, you know, because I mean I always believe like mix into the two bus. Like if it can get a quick sound
Yeah.
really nice, mix into it. So Brent and Amro, here's a question for you. I'm not sure, is Steve Miller an audio engineer as well?
I don't know if he's really doing audio. Actually, I think he does some recording at home because he was here and visited us at the studio last year before the whole virus thing broke. And I know that we were talking about, uh, compression and reverb techniques on drums and,
Right.
like how to do them and stuff. So Steve may be doing some mixing and stuff now. I'm not sure exactly what he's up to in that regard.
Nice.
So, but yeah. Anyway,
Brent, well, I work completely in the box. That's cool, Ben. Doesn't matter. Like whatever's on your two bus, just let us know if you put anything on your two bus at the end of it. And yeah, what'd you guys throw on there? I'd love to know everybody's flavors because usually two bus is always set, isn't it? Anyway, I wanted to ask you another question since because you got the Tegler summing box and you got the Toft, which is also another kind of piece of outboard for summing your mixes through. Besides
yeah.
working in the box, have you ever combined running the Tegler into, I would say, into the Toft, or vice versa, where you can be able to like kind of, I don't know, have you ever done that? Because like imagine having 32 summing, but you have an actual fader with it and the EQ going on into the Tegler. I don't know if you've ever tried that.
Believe me, I have thought about that. Um,
Your
I have,
audio's gone.
hello, can you hear me?
Chaz, I can't hear you.
Hello. Can you hear me?
I can hear loud and clear now. Yeah.
Okay. So that's a great question. I have thought about doing that. I have
Yeah.
not done it yet. I've considered taking the output from the Toft into the Tegler and vice versa. And
Right.
then the other thing that I could do too is I could, because the Toft's only 32 channels.
Right.
Say I wanted to run a whole bunch of stuff through a mix. I was considering, it's like, well, maybe I run the Tegler I sum a whole bunch of stuff into like, let's say 2 channels of the Toft.
Right.
And then like, then I still have 30 other channels to play with.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. So, I mean, I have not done that yet. It's a great question because believe me, I've thought about it. I just haven't done it yet.
Well,
So,
yeah, that's yeah.
the Toft is cool. It's, the next step up from, that kind of technology would be a Trident board, which, admittedly is, a better board. But, this, I use it, I think the direction I'm kind of heading in is, I mean, a lot of it is band dependent, like
Right.
what the band wants, right? And some bands are just totally cool within the box, for a song or an EP or whatever, a single. Other bands like want that experience and want to go through mixing boards and want to go through outboard gear, and other bands or artists might be cool with hybrid. So a lot of what I do is really like artist dependent,
Right.
so
That's interesting. What I mean, how artists would think if they don't know their way around the studio. I'm not sure if they would even know what to say.
So what I try to do is lay out options for them, and I'll try to show them like examples of, well, if we do it this way, it's going to sound like this. If we do it that way,
Right.
it's going to sound different. There's benefits, but there might be some drawbacks. And, like if I do everything through outboard, recalls are going to be a pain in the butt,
So it's interesting. Like I want to ask you about this example. So does an artist, when you get an artist in there, do you obviously you have to give them the options like either going through the console or outboard or summing or in the box. And do most of them understand what that means if they don't have any engineering background?
Some do, because actually some of the artists I work with self-record, and I just,
Okay.
and they'll send me their tracks and I do mixes, right?
Right.
So some of them totally know, and
Yeah.
some of them have been through the process before, and maybe they record here, or sometimes like we'll record half the tracks here,
Yeah.
and then they'll do some overdubs at home and send me the tracks, and I fly them in. So there's, for somebody who just doesn't know, like I'll try to explain it to them and give them like an education. Like some artists, I think, just don't care. Some artists don't really care or don't even want to know. It's weird. Some people just don't care like what microphone you put in front of them. And
Yeah.
other people
Just
are
like it.
like, I gotta sing through an SM7. I gotta sing through, you know what I mean? I
Right.
gotta
Right.
sing through a 47, or I gotta sing through this
Yeah.
or a 58, right? Some artists just don't care. And if you ask them, they don't care. They don't want to be bothered. So it's weird because, which kind of makes it interesting because of the
All right.
people,
Yeah.
right? We have all these different artists we work with and all these different songs. It's like every time is literally different.
Yeah. It's like any song. But it's interesting. I wanted to ask you that question because I have to give it to you, my friend. You're a very patient human being to ask that, to open up these options for an artist who doesn't know about that, Because what if you feel like the song can be easily mixed in the box and get a great tone instead of going through the whole analog and outboard and recalls? And if you don't know, this artist might change his mind every 2 seconds. Aren't you shooting yourself in the foot there sometimes with something like that?
Well, here's the thing. If I got one mix running, right? If I got one mix that's going totally, let's say I've got one mix I'm doing analog, right? Either through a board or through a summing thing, that doesn't prevent me from working on other artists' mixes on other sessions in the box.
Right.
Because if I'm doing these mixes in the box and this other band's mixes over here, I can still work in the computer without touching any of the settings here, right?
Right.
Right. Or I can do one in the box and one hybrid through the Tegler summing mixer, another
Right.
one through the Toft, and then have another one in the box. So that classic old studio thing of like, I got a 2-inch 24, track tape,
Yeah.
and I got a mix for a band. I don't want to touch anything until it's done. And
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
I don't have to worry. I don't have to worry about that. So
That's
but
that's
it's also different price points too. So
yeah.
right. So it's like I'm definitely gonna, charge. It's gonna cost more because it's gonna take longer to do it. With patch bays and dialing in gear, and
Yeah.
it's gonna take a little longer, but it's gonna be a more handcrafted finished product.
100%. And that was my next question. You answered it. So I wanted to ask, like, well, with your workflow, if you got the Toft on your left, and then you have, let's say, the summing in between, you're in the box and the Toft.
Yeah.
Monitoring. How'd you deal with that? Because I mean, I see your monitors are right on top of your console. Do you have another set, the same set in front of your box, or do you keep twisting your head to mix? Or are you used to mixing on the side, or how does that work for you?
Well,
Two different
actually,
mixes.
what you can't see right underneath this screen here,
Yeah.
is like your control surfaces. I've got control surfaces down here.
Right.
So yeah, so it's shaped like I've got the Toft over here, and then control surfaces right under the screen here. So what I can do is I'll just sit here with my arm and play with the faders.
Oh, fantastic.
While I'm sitting in the sweet spot.
Right. That's
so
good.
I can just reach over, and so I've got it's like another mixer coming off.
Right.
So then I can work here. I'm in the sweet spot, or I can sit over here. Sometimes I'm testing with headphones.
Right.
But usually I sit here and I'm in the sweet spot, and I can just hit the faders here, and so if I'm working, so it's good because it gives me, hearing it out of one ear sometimes.
Yeah.
It's weird because it almost gives you, not exactly, but it's kind of reminds me of like the whole mixing in mono thing.
Yeah.
Because if I sit way back here, it's like everything's kind of getting gelled into one sound in one ear. Right.
Right.
So, but if I spin, all of a sudden it's like, whoop, there it is.
Yeah.
So
it's funny you're saying that. Well, that's the reason why I asked this question, because whenever I'm tweaking my rack, which is on my right,
Yep.
right? So whenever I turn, my left ear goes to the speakers, and I do have that mono thing. And I had to get used to it because when you turn your head, you got to learn how to listen with one ear as well.
Yep.
Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
And it's like, and it's annoying sometimes because okay, which one's better, my right ear or my left ear? But I have no choice. I have to hear with my left ear because I have to turn this way. But I keep turning constantly, like go back and forth, go back and forth, and you get used to it. And I always thought, okay, what if I put a set of speakers on the side of this rack? But then it's gonna sound different because that's the sweet spot of the speakers in my studio. And this is a different calibration. It's like, okay, I'm just going to confuse the crap out of myself for no reason. So
well, actually, I've been looking for a smaller set of speakers to put over here, like right next to the screen.
Yeah.
And I was going to use it more for editing, let's say, not quite so much for mixing, but let's say I'm doing some slip editing on drums.
Yeah.
Right. Or I'm doing some comping or something where I don't need that really microscopic kind of fine tune, sound.
Yeah.
It's just for editing.
Yeah. You can use anything for that.
So actually there's a company I chatted with them at NAMM called Fluid Audio, and they have a new set of monitors. I think it's the FX80 model. They're powered, they're front ported, they're like the speaker inside of a speaker. What's that called? Not convergent.
Coaxial.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So they're these coaxial speakers. I heard them at NAMM at Anaheim last January, and I was like, holy crap. $500 for a pair. They're kind of like in the same ballpark as Cali. Like Cali's are like,
yeah.
So they're like an affordable speaker that sounds amazing. And I'm like, you know what? For a second set of speakers, or even as a primary, I mean, you could use them as a primary set. They're amazing. So, I'm also looking at a new pair of like Adams or Genelecs or something like that, but I'm holding off until
if you're good to go. Are those NS10s in the back or the HS? What are those in the back?
HS8.
Oh yeah, I used to have the HS. Look, another set of speakers maybe for your computer to consider. Just I don't know if you've tried them. They're by IK Multimedia. They're about this big, MTMs, and they're about that price range. I keep hearing great things about them. I tried the older ones. The newer ones are much better. But also for $500, you can get a pair of NS10s, used ones on the market.
Yeah. I remember NS10s in the studio from years ago, and I never liked them.
Nobody does.
I mean, well, that's the whole point of NS10s is that you like make them sound like you make them sound crappy to know if you're like in the ballpark or not. It's like what works. I mean, it's like the backwards way of doing it. It's sort of like, imagine if doctors did surgery like how you mix on NS10s, where something like goes wrong or something shitty, so it's working right. It's like, well, all the blood's coming out, so I guess we hit a vein. It's just, what I mean? It's just weird. Like it's this backwards way of working. Like you've got to make the highs or the mids and there was no, I don't know. I never liked working on them, but it's like anything. If you get used to it, you can work on it. But
yeah,
I'd rather hear something more accurate.
Yeah, well, I mean, the NS10s I just got the set of Genelec ones. Those and fantastic. I put a price. But I've been using the Genelec, the NS10s for close to 7-8 years, and I've mixed the records on them. I got used to them.
Yeah.
And now when I put them on, I'm like, they're just sitting there right now. Like once in a while, I'll just turn them on. I was like, you motherfuckers made my life a living hell. Actually, no, they helped, I suppose, and I have the whole in the box. But I got used to them. It's just that mid range, because the human ear, as you know, is like it's all about that mid range. But the thing is, with the NS10s, you gotta it's always about compensating. At 1K or something like that, you got the 7 dB boost going on, and
it's insane.
So it's screaming there. The snares are crackling, the vocals and the guitars are going right away, so you're good to go. In a way, I always thought, but it's obvious because you have that boost there, and obviously, it was my biggest problem was the low end and the top end, and I had a pair of Focals before, but I didn't mix with them. I just check because I got used to the NS10s. I didn't want to change around. I just checked the low end and the high end, top end. But now with these new Jennies I got, personally for me, they're the smaller ones for my room. The low end, man, you'd be surprised. Like if you have a chance to try them, give them a try. Why not? But I mean, there's so many sets out there, I suppose.
Yeah,
And
well,
personally,
we talked to the Genelec people when we were at NAMM in January too. So
yeah.
um, I'm thinking like I think the 1032s I was looking at.
I used to use those in my old studio. Those are great. The old
Yeah.
1032s.
Well, yeah. The current ones I think are the 1032Bs. I think the old one was the original 1032s.
A's,
I
yeah.
think they're Bs now or something.
Yeah.
But they've got like the room DSP stuff built
That's
into
what I use. Yeah. That's great.
Okay. Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
But 1032s were, yeah, fantastic, I have to say. I'm going to just look at the chat for a second. See, there's a bunch of things that have been written here. Well, we're completing the box. I'm just going to read if there's a question. Depends on the song. Oh, yeah, we're asking about the tubas. So Amroth obviously says depends on the song. Yep. I mean, I always say for the tubas, like I have my set comps and I tweak them depending on each song, obviously. So, and he's saying the API 2500 emulation, Magic Death Eye compressor plugin. Don't know that one. Brent likes to use the Slate VCC for the console emulation or one of the plugin Alliance strips, Brainworks HD2. Harmonic saturation, Brainworks Masterdesk, PA Shadow Hills comps, FabFilter Pro L2. Fantastic. It's nice to know what everybody's using. Acoustica Audio, Celestion, IK Multimedia Tapia Collection. How is the IK tape? It's X. Okay, they're talking to you. Sorry, reading reviews. They're all talking to each other now. They've completely.
Oh yeah, I'm looking.
Question for Chaz. Question for Chaz. Here we go. What's your monitoring situation like? What monitor controller speakers are you using currently? So yeah, you didn't tell us. So what
Yeah,
monitors?
so there's the pair of the HS8s
Yep.
with the matching HS8S subwoofer.
Right.
There's a pair of old Mackie MK whatevers that sometimes I use for tracking. Actually, I'm planning on pulling those out and using them for like synths, just so I can play synthesizers through them. But they're actually really good for tracking, and they're not bad.
Right.
For monitor controller, I've got the Drummer MC 3.1.
Right, that's a nice piece, that one.
Oh man, yeah, it's got like 6 inputs and three. It's got three
outputs?
Actually 4 outputs.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it has a separate mono or sub output.
Yeah.
Three other outputs, plus 2 separate headphone cues on it.
Nice.
So the Drummer stuff is really nice. What I love about the Drummer is it has a whole bunch of mix check functionality built into the analog circuitry. So it has like this high pass, like this 3-band kind of filter that you can listen to. If you hit like the low button, you're hearing everything from 250 hertz down.
All right.
And then it's got the mid band from 250 up to like 3.5K. And then I can monitor just everything over 3.5K.
Right.
It's got a mono button. It can switch to left and right.
Right.
I can mono on one speaker, mono on the other speaker, mono on both speakers. Yeah. I can flip phase and do mid-side on it.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And I know there's plugins that do that, but it's like I can just reach
button really quick. Yeah.
Reach over and click. It's like changing the radio station on your car or hitting your windshield wiper. You don't think about it. Just reach over and
ding, and it's super helpful. I completely agree with it's so important to have these things on them. Like I bit the bullet this year and I bought the Avocet. Honestly, I'm super happy with this thing.
Good.
But it doesn't have what you're talking about, the low, mid, and high, which is interesting. But my Genelex on the GLM, it's obviously there's its own console. It has that on there, so I check them sometimes, but not often. But the whole mono and phase and left and right and having 6 inputs and balancing each, if you get different inputs coming in or different sources, and you want to check between the balances, like especially when you're doing summing or in the box, when you test things out. So you have the DAW and the summing, and I balance the volumes out there so they be at the same level and see what sounds better. Things like that just makes such a difference. And
so the Drummer units on the bottom have these little calibration screws.
Right.
You basically test tone through it, and I've got a dB meter that I'll put on a tripod and calibrate so that all the so that the in or the outputs hitting its inputs are
Right.
all calibrated. So the sound coming through the board is the same level as the sound coming out of the DAW,
Yep.
kind of thing, right?
Yep.
So so it's a great tool to have, but the issue is like you got to set it up. So
Yeah.
like
But
so it's no big deal. You just got to spend the afternoon with the VU meter or
yeah.
calibrating dB meters, screwdrivers, and once it's done, you're pretty much done, right?
Well, that's cool. But the other side, what I like about it, you press each input button. You just press it for 2 seconds and you use the volume knob and you calibrate between them. Made life so much easier, I have to
That's
say.
cool.
Yeah,
That's
that's because if I had to do it with the screw, because the thing is sometimes different sources come in different levels all the time.
yeah.
If you're always getting different sources, like I was telling you, I was printing these tapes to put on them. So I was running a cassette player and I needed to check, okay, what am I playing with here? And if I didn't have that, they were so low and so hissy, you know, I had to manage it that way. So
Yeah.
anyway, we got another question for you, plugin. Okay, linking low mid buttons, does it add color though? Oh, Brent's asking about your drummer. He's like, liking that low mid high buttons, does it add color? I guess he's talking about the DAC on your or is it just a monitor controller? Does it have a digital analog? Well, it does. I'm sure it does.
It has its own integrated digital analog converter that you can use
Right.
if you want. It also just has TRS or XLR inputs too. So the
Right.
thing's got like 4, 5, or 6 inputs on it.
Right.
So it has like an input from like a, like the old little sub mini jack coming off an Android or iPhone. So you
Right.
can plug like a mini stereo jack into it.
Right.
You can come in through TRS, multiple TRSs, multiple XLRs. You can come in through through the DAC.
Right.
So it's not like multiple inputs. It's your
Right.
choice.
Oh, that's cool.
So the thing is, you can just like flip between different things, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I can have an iPad or a computer playing reference tracks, and I just flip between the reference track.
Yeah.
If it's a reference track that I don't have like in my project, I can just reference that way. Just balance, just get the just level match it, and just
Right.
flip between the different inputs. So yeah, the drummer doesn't really add much color, and it's funny because I've tested the drummer DAC against the Focusrite converters, and it's weird because they're a little different, not much, but some music one sounds better than the other. It's just
Right.
weird, and they're you know what I mean? So they're both close, and they're both usable. I mean, they're both totally 100%, cool and usable. But the beauty of the drummer unit is you can come in either digital, or if you want to keep your signal flow 100% analog,
Yeah.
you can do that, which is what I wanted, because with all this, audio, with the Toft and the console, and right,
Yeah.
I want to be able to come in from a console or come in from a computer, and I can come into the computer either, through the Focusrite DAC, hit its analog out into the drummer, or come right from come right into the drummer with digital. So, you know what I mean? So I can go like straight digital into the drummer or through the Focusrite, so that's how I've tried to build the studio, to be like really flexible.
Yeah. That's the
So
key.
like, right, so if I want to do in the box or summing or whatever, I can just hit patch bays, and without having to crawl under desks and behind racks, and just make it happen.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
Make it happen.
Practicality and efficiency and flexibility is utmost importance for me. And it's cool. Like example, talking about desks and stuff like that. I want to build stuff, and I keep thinking I'm going to build my desk and put my rack units in it. But then I always think, what if something goes wrong with the cable in the back? That means I have to go from under the desk and pull things out. And there's a labyrinth of wire. Here I just twist it, go in. I know where everything is, done. Anyway, now let's talk about a bit of music. Well, first of all, guys, what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to share a link to Chaz's SoundCloud account, And you guys need to check out this music. It's fantastic. I hope it comes in on the comments. And here we go.
Yeah,
So
YouTube comments can be weird about, I think,
I'm
sharing.
doing on the live chat. Actually, I put the link on the live chat. So if they're there, or you know what, I'm gonna actually put it in the description. Well, I have to do it. I can't do it now, so I'll have to do it in the
Yeah,
description
that's fine.
below. But see, I have all your links down there. So in the YouTube in description, all of Chaz's links are down there. So what I'll do after we're done with the talk, I'll put in also the playlist. Unless did you guys get that playlist? Can you guys try opening the playlist from the live chat? Does it open from there? If you guys can check.
Now, which playlist is the Spotify or the
No,
SoundCloud?
it's the SoundCloud. It's a good one because the Spotify one, I was going through the different artists, and there was that first artist. God, I forgot the name, and it had that flaming lips, David Bowie kind of thing going on. I was like, "What's this?" I'm like, "Oh, this is pretty dope," and I was like, "Cool." I'm driving on this one, and then but the SoundCloud, I liked it because you had like a song from different artists, so they could get
Yeah.
a different taste of what you've done. And guys, once you go in there, I mean, for me, there's two great songs you've mixed on there, which I really love, is Liz Shaw's song called American Writer. Check that one out. And
Yeah,
another one was Saint Agnes, Move Like a Ghost. What a song! That is a badass tune. That one, I really like that one.
well, that was just a fun little mix thing.
Doesn't
That,
matter. You did a fantastic job on it. Love
yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, there was some weird, yeah,
What?
it's funny that when we bring up mixes, it's like every mix I've done going back, I mean, it's like mixes. It seems like they're never done.
No, they're never done. They're never
And
perfect. You know that.
and like yeah, right. And like you hear something that you worked on, and it could be 1 week later, or 1 year later, or a decade later, and you're like,
And it's
oh,
out, and you're like, why the fuck did I do that and release it? All
what
right.
was I thinking?
Trust me, now I listened to my last records which I put up, and until I started like getting heavily into it, like, I can redo that mix, and I would redo them, but like it's done, it's out, it's already out. I can't bring it back and call it. It's done. It's part of your life right now, you know.
Yeah.
So you just get better. Who cares? As long as the energy and the song's great, you
Yeah.
know, whatever,
Yeah.
you know. But your mixes in general, I was like listening to them. It's just clarity and great. I actually sent you a voicemail today when I was listening to the Spotify account, and I realized in my car, I usually know my speakers well, but I had a little issue going on. I was like, "Where's that snare?" Like I couldn't hear it, but I could hear it, and I couldn't hear it. I was like, "Okay, that's a cool way of mixing, like tucking in that snare in the back." And I realized it was my car speakers, but in a way, I enjoyed it that way. The guitars were just sitting right here, and it was pretty.
Which song was that?
There's a bunch of them because I was going. I can't remember. There's more of the rock songs. Not I have to. Let me check. I'll check right
That's
now.
all right. It's okay.
Because the SoundCloud one was much easier. Anyway.
SoundCloud's a pain on mobile unless you got the SoundCloud Pro.
Right. No, I have an account, but I hardly ever jump in on it. I just have Spotify right now. And
I'm sorry, Spotify.
Yeah.
Spotify, sorry.
No, I got that, but SoundCloud I don't use as much for some reason, although I have all my stuff there. And sorry, give me a sec. Now it's got me tickling my head. But you know what? Forget about that because then I put
right, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
All right, I put everything up in my studio here. I was like, damn, this is jiving, man. This is great. Okay, cool. They got the link. Yep, it opens up. So are you working on anything at the moment? Like, what have you been up to during this lockdown? Like, how's business been for you? What's been going on?
Well, let's see. I think we put out an EP for someone. Let me think. EP, a bunch of singles. Done some mastering gigs. Because I I'll get mastering gigs too, which is crazy,
Yeah.
but actually I love mastering. It's just weird. It's just weird to see it's weird because like all this work that all these other people have done is funneled into this, stereo 2-track
Right.
file that you get, and they're like, do something with it, And
Yeah.
there's only so much you can do, but there's so much you can do. right?
Yeah,
Because
there is all that. It's all about the fine detail, but it's cool because you get a different perspective. Okay, one thing, like when you get a mastering session example,
yeah.
and you find the mix lacks on a certain few things, do you are you I'm like, would you go and tell them, listen, do you mind if you fix this a little bit here so it'll come out better? You know, what's best for the song again? How do you approach that with the client?
That's tough. That's really tough
I know
because
it's a sensitive question, but
it's sensitive because and I'm gonna well, I think I can tell this story.
yeah, go on.
Um, there's sort of a doom stoner metal
Your
band.
audio's gone again, Chaz.
Hello, hello, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Hello, test one, two, two,
Nope,
two.
still gone. Can't hear you.
What? What is
There
going
you
on?
go. There you
Hello?
go. There you go. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, by the way, I gotta let you know a setting in Zoom which I learned. There's an advanced setting, and it's got noise reduction and compression in there. You gotta disable those because sometimes if something's too loud or whatever, it ducks you down. I don't know if that's what's happening with you. I'll let you know after this how to set that up. Anyway, it's pretty easy, but
Okay. Okay. Yep. I'm not a Zoom expert.
yeah,
So there was a hello. I'm still
yeah,
here, right?
you're still
Okay.
there.
Okay. So there was a band I was working with. They're like sort of a stoner doom metal band from Norway,
Okay,
and I'm always looking for opportunities. So they had this thing online where they're like, "Hey, we have an album that we've recorded. We need somebody to mix it." So they put a bunch of multi tracks up for one song, and a bunch of people like, wow, this band's amazing. So a bunch of people tried to mix it to like win this gig to mix the
right.
band. And um, I came in second place for the mix competition, and the guy who won, and I'm not going to say the person's name, but it was a pretty well-known guy in Nashville, right? Won the mix gig, and so they were like, okay, well, we're gonna have this guy do the mix. I'm like, great, that's awesome. I know who he is, blah blah blah. But you know what? I'll master it for you because I just wanted to get my name on the record,
Right,
and the band was so good that you know what I mean? The band was that good that I
right,
wanted to be involved in some way. I'm like, okay. So I get these mixes back from this pretty well-known dude in Nashville, and they were a mess.
right. They're a mess.
They were a mess. So I told the band, look, because like he had like pushed these things like up into clipping. It was like, it wasn't even like -2 or -3. They were just like these mixes were slammed into like just bouncing and clipping off the top. And yes, I can pull a track in and bring the gain down in my DAW to master it. But if it's clipped, it's clipped.
Yeah, it's clip you
And
can't do.
yeah, I can run it through RX, right? Through Isotope RX, but it was already so squashed and maximized and limited that
Right.
there's like nothing for me to do except declip it. And it was just squashed and sounded icky, right? So I told him, I'm like, hey, can you have him send me a copy of the mix without like his limiter on it, maybe?
Right.
Right? Where it's not being, pushed up into digital clipping. And something happened where the guy was just not cooperative. So they kind of fired him and then asked me to do the mixes. And then the guy was like, well, he wanted to get paid because he did the mixes, even though he wasn't honoring any like recall requests. So
Okay.
so it turned into this huge freaking like nightmare of a situation. So the band ended up having to pay him, I think.
Right.
So instead of me mixing it, right, or me doing anything with it, they like had to deal with like legal fees and paying this dude to get him off their back.
Right.
And all because the dude just like was just really his mix was absolute like, you know, it was a train wreck. It was a train wreck. So the band ended up taking my mixes, listening to them, and said, "Look, we can't pay you. We don't have any money. Blah 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 blah."
Yeah.
And so I'm like, well, so they just So I think the guitar player was like, you know what, I'm just going to mix it. So he did a mix, and it sounded like very much like what I had done. It was very similar but different. But it was like they, they kind of, they were a European band that thought, oh, this guy in the States is going to do the right thing. He's this well-known dude in Nashville, blah, 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 blah. And it just turned out to be a train wreck. And I was like, man,
just out of curiosity, what does his first name start with? What letter? All right, maybe I shouldn't ask.
We can talk offline.
All right, because it's something like what you're talking about. It could be interesting. I mean, you got to see both sides of the story, right? Maybe something happened between the band and that engineer for some reason, and I don't know.
But all that I know is that like I got these mixes that were unusable,
right?
Because they were digitally clipped. It's like, and they were so compressed, so squashed, and digitally clipped that what am I supposed to do with them? I can run them through RX and get rid of the digital clipping, kind of, but they're still really compressed and squashed.
See, it makes me think, was he doing that on purpose? Because, I mean, those are basic 101 things not to clip. That's one thing for sure,
I don't know.
Asking, like, maybe there was some kind of situation, because if he's well known to any basic, like, you wouldn't send a clipped mix. You know what I mean?
Well, see, you would think that, but this band was also like an unsigned band. This was their first album.
Yeah, but so what? They should be professional about it. Doesn't matter, unsigned or signed. You got to treat everyone the same, isn't it?
I do not disagree. And when I pointed stuff out to the band and they started listening really closely, they were like, yeah, you're absolutely right. This is, because they really didn't. I don't know if the mixes they listened to and the ones I got were even like the same mixes.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I was like, well, it sounds like he's sending you like a mix that was like kind of fake mastered, just so it sound competitive. So have him send me his mix without.
Right.
Mastering,
and what did you say about that?
They're
because
like,
that's what they usually do, right? They'll put a limiter on it just to make it louder for the client, but then
well, there was like no second mix, and there was like there was no other mix. There were no revisions, no anything. I'm like, really? And this is like 2018, 2017, whenever the heck it was. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. So, but the thing is like now I'm like scared to like say anything to anybody. It's like, well, I got a mix, but I mean, I've been lucky. Most of my mastering gigs have been pretty, I've gotten good stuff. I've gotten good mixes, so it hasn't been too bad. I mean, most of them have been great, actually, have been absolutely great. But there's always an exception, and it was just like, what do I say? It's like, well, when you're dealing sometimes with, let's say, artists or songwriters who aren't audio engineers and don't understand the gain staging and the clipping and the limiters and maximizers, right? It's like they just want to know what's going to fix it and make it better. A lot of them don't care about the technical details. They don't want to be bothered with it. It's like, you're just right. They're like, just fix it. It's like, well, I can't fix it because it was given to me broken. So you have to. So, right. So it just gets really uncomfortable, very cringy and uncomfortable. And, and I mean, I've gotten multi-tracks from people who've recorded it, big studios out in LA. And I'm like, was like this after hours for free? You didn't pay for this, I hope, right? It just like, tracks from big name studios in LA that I'm like, I would be embarrassed to send multi-tracks that I recorded out to a mix engineer that were like, I've just like, I've gotten stuff that like from studios that's like, train wreck material. If it's an artist who's not technically technically advanced, an artist, a songwriter recording themselves, in Audacity or Ableton or whatever, right? That's understandable. You've got somebody who's not an engineer, but when you're getting like, a song that's got 80 tracks or 160 tracks per song in a Pro Tools session from a big studio, anywhere in the world, and they're, just a train wreck. It's like, I hope it was like a, after hours thing, or somebody's cousin got you in for free. It's just, and it's like, so sometimes what I do is if I if I can fix it and not say anything, I've just kind of gotten to that point where if I can make it work
Yeah.
and not ruffle any feathers, because like, I mean, I don't want to be a dick about it. You know, it's not, I'm not trying to make somebody look bad. I'm trying to help the artist out. That's my end goal.
But
So
there's also something that can backfire on you. I completely understand where you're coming from, but let's say you get a mix and it's slightly clipping. You say, you know what, we can get away with it, blah blah blah, all of this. You turn the gain down and everything, and you master it. But that clip will always be there, right?
Yep.
Subtly. But what if you send it, to the artist, and then the artist starts noticing that the problem is there, and if you didn't communicate before that there was an issue with the mix, that'll come back to you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's the tricky part there.
Yeah. I mean, if there's audible stuff, if there's because sometimes, I mean, you know this, I know this, and other people who've, worked doing this stuff know this. Sometimes you'll see a digital clip.
Yeah.
You'll hit 0 or, 0.1 or 0. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Minimal. And that transient's so fast and so quick.
You don't notice it.
That you don't hear it. Yeah. Right. And sometimes that transient might be on a big snare hit where you're not going to notice it because there's a big snare hit. Right. But if it's like in the middle of a vocal take, or something quiet or a quieter passage in the song, and it's this audible thing, it's like, it's got to go.
Yeah.
So I oftentimes, I will pull in tracks in either mastering sessions or mixing sessions, into RX.
Right.
And
I have never used the RX, but anyway.
Yeah. I mean, I'll pull them into RX, and you can do a lot with it, and sometimes in a mix, sometimes you can make stuff work, and it's just not noticeable. And it's, I mean, you listen to an old Led Zeppelin record or whatever, you hear squeaking drum pedals and,
that's all right. That's natural, right?
Yeah. But I mean, there's you hear tape distortion on old, records. And I mean, granted, it's not the old days and music's mixed a lot differently than it used to be. But if I can fix it, I fix it. If it's a problem that I can't fix, I will definitely let the artist know that, like, hey, there's something up with this, So, but I usually, if I can bring it to their attention, if it's something that, I mean, you're absolutely right. If it's something that you think is going to come back and bite you in the butt,
but I completely understand. It's that just like, I guess every situation is different than the other one. I think as long as it's kind of clear communication with the artist, because in the end, I think the big picture is, listen, guys, let's put egos aside. We need to serve the song. That's the most important thing. And I'm going to give you if it was me, I was like, I don't want to step on anybody's toes. I don't care. I just need to make sure that this song is being served the right way. That's all,
Yep.
We got a question for you, Chaz, from Brent. So just listen quickly to the Avec Home track. I think it's one of the tracks on there. What was your chain for the acoustic guitar in that? And what was the verb added in the mix or room mic? Sounds great. I need to refresh my memory on that.
You know what? That mix is for a Lewitt microphone contest.
Okay.
So that was actually a mix I had done. I just put up not too long ago, and I've gotten so many call or questions and messages about that mix that I've been threatening to do a YouTube video about it. I just want to clear it with the artist first.
Yeah.
I was going to do like a mix breakdown video. Everybody's asking me about the reverbs, and I think I'm trying to remember now. I think I use like
your secret.
No. It's not. It's just like Valhalla was one. I think it's like Valhalla vintage verb or something.
Right.
Wait. So he was asked. I have to go in and look. So the acoustic guitar chain was.
I'll repeat the question for you, for Chaz. Just listen quickly to the Avec Home track, which now I remember which one. That is a fantastic track you've done on that. Yeah. What was your chain for the acoustic guitar in that? Let's start with that one.
That, I believe, I'm trying to remember now. I may have just used, that was totally in the box.
Yeah.
So that would have probably been I'm pretty sure I use like the Andrew Shep's Omni channel from
What a
Waves.
fantastic plugin.
Yeah,
I think that if it's a Desert Island plugin for me, that's the one.
dude, it's
The
just
Omni
like
chips.
that plugin
Everything.
is like amazing.
Yeah.
It's just it's like it's my favorite channel strip. It just
Yep.
you can move stuff around. Actually, that one and the Eventide Ultra channel, which nobody ever talks about.
Never used it.
It's a very cool plugin. You can't do surgical stuff like you could with
Yeah.
FabFilter. It's more like broad brush strokes and color.
Yeah.
But the Eventide Ultra channel has their Omnipressor compressor built in as one of the channel strip
Okay.
things in the rack.
Right.
So that's a really cool one. But I can check the settings on that. But usually what I do on acoustic, I try to get a little sparkle on top. I'm usually looking for like that lower mid range, like that kind of honk sound you get in some instruments, like usually between 350 and 450. I'm
Right.
looking for some mud to like pull out. So I either pull the mud out or I'll use like de-essers, and like Chef's Omni channel's got the two de-essers
Yeah.
built in.
MS as well. You can do it in MS.
Yep.
Yeah.
So like I don't remember my exact settings, but I know it was Chef's Omni channel. And then what I do is all my reverbs, and like I've been asked like dozens of times in the last couple of weeks about the stupid reverb on that song. It's like, what did I do?
Open up the session, Chaz. Let's see. What is it? Come on.
And I don't know if I can share my screen. I probably could, right?
You can just tell us which plugs.
Yeah. So
yeah, you can share the screen. There's a button down on Zoom and it says share screen.
Where is that?
Center. It's got a green. It's a green button.
Oh yeah, share screen.
Yeah.
I mean, if you guys really want me to, I'll open it up. But
no, just tell us the verbs you got going on.
Yeah. Actually, lots of times I don't use verb as much as I use like slapback delays that are repeating a bunch of times. There was like the Valhalla, what is it? The vintage verb or room.
It was funny. I was looking at it today. They all look. Yeah. They all have the same similar colors as well, and I have to like go through them. Like, which one is Echo? Echo something.
Yeah. Well, yeah. They
Echo or something like that.
They've got the Freak Echo. They've got the Valhalla Shimmer, the Valhalla Room, the Valhalla Vintage Verb. They've got a bunch of different ones, and they're all really good. They're like $50, and they're all really good. There's the Valhalla Delay, which you can delay it long enough that it turns into like a short verb.
Right.
It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
So I think one of the things that works for me is that I take all my delay and reverb returns, right? So all the reverbs and delays from all my tracks are being sent out and being returned on separate channels, right? Okay. So all those channels for the effects returns for ambient stuff, harmonizers, reverbs, delays are all hitting my D bus. Now my D bus is back into the Michael Brower thing. My D bus goes through a Kazrog true iron emulation of a transformer. It hits a U73 tube limiter emulation, and then it hits a stereo widening. So on my D bus, I widen everything to 150%.
Right.
So just for the reverbs and the washes and the little sprinkly, sparkly fairy dust stuff. So I don't widen my whole mix. I just widen one bus of it with the important parts that need to be widened, right? So that washy background vocal stuff and maybe some
audio's gone again.
Come on. Hello, can you hear me?
Getting juicy right there, my friend.
Hello, can you hear me?
No.
Can you hear me?
Now I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's a really good. You got my brain running into that. Like you when you run all of this, is it all being run parallel?
Well, yeah. I mean, like it's just like if I was recording on a mixing board in the old days, right? where say you had a couple auxes or a couple sends off any kind of board, API, SSL, Neve, whatever, you send out to your, you can send out, you can either use an insert, right?
Yeah.
Or you do an aux, or you send out to a piece of outboard gear.
Right.
Then you can return that outboard gear to new channels on the mixing board. Right. So I do a lot of sends and returns that way, where technically, you send it and it's kind of running in parallel, but I rarely use insert like reverbs like as inserts on a channel.
Yeah, I mean that's what I was just thinking, like the way you're kind of doing it. So if you got a slapback, you got a bit of plate, you got a bit of, and you just blend them all in. But if the track's being sent to them, so are they? My question was, are they all running in parallel according to? So if you got a vocal track and you parallel all these effects there, and all these effects are running into one stereo bus, which is your D bus with the comps going on with the stereo widener, and that stereo. Not your main mix bus. I'm just saying the stereo bus or the effects bus, let's call it. And is that going into your mix bus, or is that being paralleled as well into the mix bus? So are you getting also the dry signal and a wet signal at the same time into your two bus, or is it going straight into your two bus?
That bus goes straight into the two bus.
Okay. Cool.
Now, sometimes though, because here's the thing, built into my template,
right?
I have an extra return on there that I can use in the box,
right?
Is for like a Shep's rear bus thing,
right? Okay.
Where I will return everything, just like everything except the drums. I can like do a parallel on, and then I can push that up to fatten up like a mix. I don't always do that. Maybe 3 out of 10 mixes it works. Sometimes it usually doesn't work for me that well, but sometimes it does.
Yeah.
But all of the effects returns go to the D bus, then the mix bus, not both in parallel.
Right. I get you.
But if I do anything parallel, it'll be like a Shep's bus where I got everything except the drums going.
That's how I do it. That's why I wanted to ask you. Like it's but sometimes as you said, sometimes it works, sometimes it depends on the effects, I suppose, and what's getting kind of compressed from the rear end or the rear bus, you want to call it, and
well, I just saw Andrew on a live interview a couple weeks ago. I think it was Pure Mix or Mix with the Masters or something.
Right.
And he's like, I'm really not doing rear bus anymore. He was saying how he just was trying to mix and it didn't work. And he's like, I'm just kind of getting away from it, where,
just get bored of it.
Yeah. Andrew seems to get bored of it. I mean,
everything. But I like it. I like it because it makes sense, that rear bus, to have all the music going into it, and then especially with the vocals, so it's kind of like your automatic automation, if you think about it, because you have all the music
set it up right.
If you set it up right without the drums. I run the bass in there as well,
Yep.
And what I also do is like sometimes, not all the time, depends if it's a heavy kick bass song, I would run the kick, snare, and bass into a parallel comp, a mono channel. Sometimes it works, sometimes whatever, it doesn't work. But I have on my template, like these things are set, ready to go, and if I use it, I use it. I don't use it, whatever.
Yeah, same thing. So I've got like a parallel drum thing that I keep in my template. It's usually just mono, kick, and snare.
Yep.
And I'll just crush the devil out of kick and snare.
Same here. That's what
and then I have a separate sort of parallel compression for just vocals that go to the mix bus, and then maybe the Shep's rear bus style thing, which sometimes works, sometimes doesn't.
Yep.
So and I'm fine with automating, because lots of mixes you almost have. You almost have to, especially
I do it every time, even if I don't have to. It's not an OCD thing, but I always feel like that because I've also done live. I used to work for broadcast television for a while. So you got to write things, you know, you don't always have
Oh
comps
yeah.
and stuff like that. And I always felt, you know, when you're writing things, it moves. Even with comps and stuff, like I would sit on the fader, particularly for the vocals, especially coming into the chorus and stuff. I even they're not wide automation moves, but subtle, like moving with the syllables and moving with the words and the movement. And I'd sit there throughout the whole song, and I just put, you know, touch, and I touch the whole thing and go. And then it comes to other instrumentation as well, and I just feel subtle changes, but it makes the song move a bit more like dance. Do you know what I mean?
I do. I'm just making a note here to because I know I'm going to have to answer questions about that reverb and the acoustic guitar chain. I will clarify with specifics in the comments in YouTube afterwards. I'm just taking some notes for myself here.
No worries. Steve Miller asks, there's an E track that has an obvious clip. I hear it every time.
There's a what?
There's an E track, E, a capital letter E. Maybe it's the name of the track from Steve Miller.
I'm not sure what
Maybe
track
one of his recordings on your SoundCloud.
Oh, it could be.
Yeah. Anyway, that was it. Wow, we've passed 2 hours. This was the longest episode. I could still go on till tomorrow, but yeah. But
Wow.
I think maybe we should do another one. What do you think? Like
I'm
later
game,
on.
man.
Yeah, I mean this has been great. It's been fun, and do you guys, what do you guys think? Should we do another one, like geek out on this stuff and maybe more go into depth about, I don't know, approach and whatnot? I'll let the audience know. What do you guys think? And we've passed the 2 hour mark. I don't want to take too much more of your time. Chaz, it's been fantastic talking to you, that's for sure.
Yeah,
guys,
you as well. Thank you so much.
Guys, check out Chaz's links. They're all in the description below. His Facebook, his Instagram, his SoundCloud, his Spotify. And whoever is new, please don't forget to subscribe to the Bullfunk Studios channel, and there'll be more. And in continuation, everybody asked for Tom Dupree, who's a drummer, a good friend of mine, recorded. And we're going to do a second episode, and that'll be next Wednesday. We're going to hit that up. And I think the same thing. We'll chat offline, you and I, Chaz, after this, and
Absolutely.
And we'll do another episode. It's been a lot of fun, man, talking to you. Honestly, like it's great. And I want to say thanks to Steve Whitus and Dirt Floor Productions for introducing us. Indirect. Yeah. Thank you guys, you know, for that.
Actually, I've got my
Oh, sweet.
I've got my Dirt Floor carry bag here.
Nice.
That I got from as a goodie from one of the parties up there. So
nice.
Yeah, man, those guys are doing such good work. They're doing such good work.
Yeah, they're great guys. I mean, Steve was fantastic. Yeah. And it's funny how I got to know Steve. It was just random. Oh, okay. So Steve Miller's saying Eels, not yours. Mark Everett.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's, it's, rock and roll history is full of, and pop music history is full of all kinds of glitches on, records from, Beatles records to Phil Spector stuff to, I mean, just put on Raw Power by Iggy and the Stooges. And, you're going to hear microphones being blasted and preamps overdriven. You're going to hear static and crunchy stuff and weird, I mean, part of the charm of at least older rock was the fact that it was like kind of that punk aesthetic or where it was just like raw in your face and
it was also rebellious, that was
and when you're sitting around cutting and pasting and time aligning everything to a grid with loops and all that stuff, it's like
humanity's gone.
You can make music. Yes, you can make music that way, and you can make very compelling music that way. Yeah. But there, if you let the technology rule you instead of using it as a tool, what I mean? It takes some of the humanity, I think, out of it. It's like you need to like have that connection, that emotional link. to the artist through their art, which in our case is their song.
Yeah.
Right. And there are some songs where you can absolutely, do really cool stuff in the computer. But if I'm recording a band that's like, a jazz trio or quartet, right?
Yeah.
And they're playing like old Dave Brubeck stuff or old Miles Davis stuff, I'm not going to cut that stuff and timeline into a grid and quantize. You know what I mean? It's just like it depends on the song and the genre. And, but you listen to all these great old records. And the weird thing is, I think like the pop music scene now has gotten, and people's expectations has just gotten to the point where people are so used to things being on the grid and things being auto-tuned. And like, then you go to see these bands live and they're either playing to, MIDI tracks or backing tracks, or they totally suck. It's like,
they talk the talk, they don't walk the walk.
Well, we'll see. But the thing is, though, is like, I got a love-hate thing with this, because if it's still a good song, it's a good song. Even if they can't play it live, it's still a good song, right? That they recorded. So you have to, so it's weird because you got to get past the fact that they can't.
Hang on a second. Do you remember Milli Vanilli?
Yeah, but that wasn't them.
I know, but still there was lip syncing. The idea of lip syncing.
Yeah.
Now it's the norm.
I know.
I'm going to tell you a little story. And look, if I want to see a band live, I'm a live musician. I want to make the mistakes, no worries. But I hate the fact that people pay money to go see someone lip syncing to a backing track with a stage. Yes, it's a great song, no doubt. But why would I do that? I just watch it on video at home and save myself the hassle. I work in the events industry. I'll make money out of that. I do show calling and stage managing and stuff like that. And I'm going to tell you this little story, which is crazy. I have to give it.
Here we go.
Yeah. I mean, it was a bunch of big pop artists coming on stage, and I was doing sound stage managing, right? I was heading the stage and all the artists coming in and stuff. Like, cool. So there's a very famous pop artist. She's super famous. No name. You won't know her anyway. She's in the Middle East region. Smoking hot, blah, blah, blah. She's got the sex and the pizzazz and blah, blah, blah. And, she's been all over the place. And she's been around for over a decade. Everybody knows her. Anyway, so she was on stage to perform. And I went to the side to where Monitor World is. And I was standing next to the monitor engineer, on stage left. And watching her sing, she just got started. And then I noticed something. When you're a stage manager, you got to man the whole thing, know everything what's going on, right?
Yep.
And to his right, there was a guy crouched down, sitting on a small stool with a rack unit, with a head of cans on him. I was telling the engineer, who the hell is this guy? Oh, he came with the singer, and her manager said he needs to be here. I gave him outputs or whatever. He's patched him in. I'm like, patched into what? What are you talking about? This guy was live auto-tuning this singer. Live, Chaz. I've never seen that. She wasn't lip syncing. Why is that? Because there's a 60-piece orchestra on the stage. And there's 5 different artists, so it's a blend of pop and orchestration.
Right.
That orchestra has never met these musicians, but they're amazing. They had to learn all their songs.
Sure.
So back to back, they were on the stage backing these singers. The singers had their own rhythm section and bands, but the orchestra was part of that. So the singers could not get away with doing a playback because there's a live orchestra in there, right?
They had to sing.
Yeah, they had to sing. But can you give it to this guy? And this guy was so into it. And I was listening to the dry and the raw signal coming out of her mic. She was completely off. And this guy was making her sound magical. He's just tweaking these knobs the whole way through, listening and going. Like, I'm like, that's the rock star right there, not her.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, that's madness, man.
It is madness. It's absolute madness. And yeah, I mean, it's sort of disingenuous and kind of dishonest to take money from people.
Yeah.
if they're expecting a live performance. But see, and this is where things start getting a little hazy, and I know we're probably running over, but I think younger generations of people just don't care about that. They want to see a show. It's like going to a movie or being entertained, right? They
Yeah.
want to see the lights and the lasers and the smoke and the dancing and the sparkly
Fair enough.
sequins, right? They
Yeah.
want to see a show.
Yeah.
They don't, I mean, for them, it's about like the show. It's about the dance and stuff. It's not about a live performance. So yeah, they're paying $150 to watch people dance and, you know, and lip sync to like this fancy karaoke machine, basically, right? But if that's what they want, you know,
Yeah, all fairness.
I mean, you know, it's not like going to go see you know, singer songwriter down on Broadway in Nashville or something, or
Yeah.
you know what I mean, where there's, you know, a 3-piece or 4-piece band or a gal or a guy with an acoustic and a 58 in front of them singing their heart out, right? That you're getting a real performance. You're getting real musicians, you know, classic.
Real vibe.
But so I think it's all about what people want and mindset, and they're both valid, right?
Yeah.
If all you care about is like going to a show, then you're going to go to the limps. You're going to go to the show with lip syncing and choreographed stuff. If you want to see like a band play, you know, there's still bands that play real instruments.
Yeah.
You know. So anyway,
I wanted to ask you just the last question. This is something about ticket pricing. Now, back in the U.S., I was connected a lot with the radio station. So I used to tour a lot with these bands there. I performed there a lot. So, and I was connected to a couple of radio stations there, and I'd always get free tickets. Ticketmaster. I don't know, is that still around? Ticketmaster?
Yeah, Ticketmaster, sure.
And I remember the average ticket used to be $20 or $25 back in the '90s. Except one time, Jimmy Page and Robert Plant were playing, and I paid $75 for. Back in the '90s. That was a lot of money. So I'm just curious to know, what are ticket prices these days for regular concerts?
Oh, like hundreds of dollars, I think.
Oh,
I mean, you know what? There hasn't been any concerts in a few months now.
Yeah.
So, and I haven't gone to any. I'm trying to think last big concert I went to, but it's like I'm always going out seeing like, you know, local jazz bands or Americana bands or whatever, you know. Ticket prices can, I mean, you might be able to go see, let's say, the Flaming Lips for 60, maybe like $80 or something. I'd have to check because I mean, I know that they came and played some shows just north of here, and I mean, there's a lot of bands that play, but it depends on the level of the bands too, because you know, because Paul McCartney came to Buffalo a couple years ago, and it was like, you know, hundreds of dollars because it's Sir Paul. But then you get a band that's, you know, not an ex-Beatle, and, you know, maybe it's like a, you know, mid-level metal band coming through, and there's a, you know, 2 or 3 metal bands that are touring North America, playing like theaters and mid-sized venues. Shows like that are still, you know, where they're not huge famous bands, you can still get into for, you know, $30 or $50 or something. But the big shows are, you know, say Taylor Swift shows up or something like that.
yeah.
You know, or the Stones come back. You know, those shows start getting pricey. So
I watched the Stones. They came to Abu Dhabi a few years ago. It was front stage and center. Man, these guys still have it. Still have it.
Stones?
Yeah, 50,000 people. People from all around the Middle East came to see that show. It was amazing, amazing.
Yeah. Yes,
anyway, I want you to stick online. Want to say bye to the guys. And guys, thank you very much for being a part of this. And I thank you a lot, Chaz, for that. And I think for the next episode, check out Chaz's playlist over there and gather up a bunch of questions for that, and let us know. And maybe we can make a whole episode on how you worked on some of the songs.
Sure.
What do you think? You know, and a little bit of war stories on those songs, on those artists you worked with.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to share. I'm happy to share my experiences with people. So, yeah, it's awesome. I'd love to do this again.
Oh, for sure. Well, I'm just gonna say bye to the crowd, and thank you guys very much. And we'll see you soon. Thanks for joining in. Take care, peace, love, and rock and roll.
And Ringo.
All right. So that's ended.